The wedding ring sat on our bathroom counter again, gleaming under the vanity lights like a tiny accusation. 3 months running, Mara had been leaving it there every morning with the same excuse. It gets in the way at work. I'm Reid Trenner, and I've been married to Mara for 4 years. Used to be a journalist before the newspaper industry collapsed. Now I inspect houses for a living. Crawling through basements and attics taught me to notice things others miss, like how my wife's wedding ring had become a part-time accessory. "Morning, honey," Mara called from the bedroom, her voice carrying that artificial brightness she'd perfected. "Running late again." I picked up the ring, feeling its weight. 2 carats, cost me 3 months' salary back when I thought love conquered financial planning. "Your ring's here again." She appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her sharp black suit, the one she wore for important meetings. Creative director at Pinnacle Marketing, my wife commanded respect in conference rooms across Portland, Maine. At home, she couldn't remember to wear her wedding ring. "Oh, thanks." She took it from me, slipping it into her purse instead of onto her finger. "It really does get in the way when I'm presenting. You understand." I understood plenty. What I didn't understand was why she thought I was stupid enough to believe it. After she left, I sat in my home office staring at inspection reports, but my mind kept circling back to that ring. Mara was meticulous about everything else. Her skincare routine, her LinkedIn posts, her carefully curated Instagram feed showcasing our perfect suburban life. She didn't forget things that mattered to her. By noon, I'd made a decision that would change everything. I drove to Pinnacle Marketing's downtown office, a sleek glass building that screamed success. The lobby smelled like expensive coffee and ambition. I'd been here exactly twice in 4 years, once for their holiday party, once when Mara forgot her laptop. Both times I'd felt like an outsider in my wife's professional world. The elevator carried me to the 7th floor, where Mara's department buzzed with creative energy. Open-plan workspace, standing desks, motivational quotes on exposed brick walls. I spotted her immediately. She was leaning over a conference table, pointing at design mock-ups while 3 colleagues nodded along. I'd brought anniversary roses, red ones, because Mara always said red showed confidence. The florist had tied them with white ribbon, and they looked appropriately romantic against my navy button-down. "Excuse me," I said to a young woman at the nearest desk. "I'm looking for Mara Trenner." The woman glanced up from her laptop, taking in my appearance with curious eyes. "Who are you here for?" "Mara Trenner, my wife." Her expression shifted to confusion. "Your wife?" Before I could respond, 2 more colleagues had drifted over, drawn by the novelty of flowers in their workspace. A bearded guy in flannel examined me like I was a puzzle missing pieces. "You're married to Mara?" he asked. 4 years this month." I held up the roses. Anniversary surprise. The 3 exchanged glances that spoke volumes. No recognition, no knowing smiles about Mara's husband dropping by. Just blank confusion, like I'd claimed to be married to a celebrity they'd never heard of. "That's sweet," the woman said carefully. "She's in the conference room." I walked toward the glass-walled room where Mara was still presenting. Through the transparent walls, I could see her animated gestures, her confident posture, the way her colleagues hung on her words. She looked powerful, successful, completely in her element. And there wasn't a single photo of me anywhere in sight. I'd noticed it immediately upon entering the floor. No wedding photo on her desk, no couple shots on her computer monitor, nothing to indicate she had a husband who loved her enough to surprise her with anniversary flowers. Her cubicle was decorated with motivational quotes, industry awards, and pictures of her college friends. I might as well have been invisible. The conference room door opened, and Mara's colleagues filed out, chatting about campaign strategies and client feedback. She was gathering her papers when she looked up and saw me standing there with roses. Her face went through a fascinating series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and something that looked suspiciously like panic. "Reid?" She glanced around nervously. "What are you doing here?" "Surprising my wife on our anniversary." I stepped into the conference room, noting how she didn't move to embrace me. "Thought you might like these." A tall man with perfectly styled hair appeared in the doorway. Late 30s, expensive suit, the kind of confident smile that came from never being told no. He looked at the roses, then at me, with obvious curiosity. "Everything okay, Mara?" he asked. "Fine, Silas. This is—" She hesitated for just a moment. "This is Reid." Silas extended his hand with practiced corporate charm. "Silas Ventar, creative director. Nice to meet you, Reid." His handshake was firm, his smile warm, but I was watching his other hand, the one that had settled on Mara's lower back with casual familiarity. A gesture so natural it was clearly habitual. "Reid's my—" Another pause. "We're married." If Silas was surprised by this revelation, he hid it well. "Congratulations. How long?" 4 years, I said, still watching his hand on my wife's back. Though apparently that's not common knowledge around here. Mara's laugh sounded forced. "Reid, you know I keep my personal and professional lives separate." "Do you?" I looked around the conference room, then back at her. "Because I'm getting the impression your colleagues didn't know you had a personal life at all." Silas's hand finally moved away from Mara's back, but the damage was done. I'd seen the intimacy in that casual touch, the way she'd leaned into it without thinking. You don't develop that kind of physical comfort overnight. "Well," Silas said with another practiced smile, "I should let you two celebrate. Nice meeting you, Reid." He left us alone in the conference room, but I could see him through the glass walls, talking quietly with the colleagues who'd been so confused by my existence. Word was spreading fast through the open office. Reid Trenner was married, and her husband had just shown up with flowers. "These are beautiful," Mara said, finally taking the roses. But she held them awkwardly, like she wasn't sure what to do with them. "Your co-workers seem surprised you have a husband." "I told you, I keep things separate. It's more professional that way." I pulled out my phone and opened LinkedIn, navigating to her profile while she watched nervously. Let's see how separate. Her professional headshot smiled back at me. Confident, successful, completely single. Relationship status, blank. Her bio mentioned her focused dedication to craft and collaborative leadership style. 12 colleagues had endorsed her collaboration skills. "Focused dedication," I read aloud. "Is that what we're calling it?" "Reid, please, you're embarrassing me." "I'm embarrassing you?" I looked around the office again, taking in the complete absence of any evidence that she had a husband who loved her. "How do you think I feel right now?" She set the roses on the conference table and moved closer, lowering her voice. "Why are you really here?" "I told you. It's our anniversary." "Our anniversary is next week." She was right, of course, but I'd been testing her, and she'd failed spectacularly. If she'd been thinking about our anniversary at all, she would have caught the discrepancy immediately. "You're right," I said. "I guess I'm just confused about a lot of things lately, like why my wife doesn't wear her wedding ring to work, or why her colleagues don't know she's married, or why the creative director feels comfortable putting his hands on her like he owns her." Mara's face flushed. "You're being ridiculous." "Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I'm married to a ghost. You exist in this office, but I don't exist in your life here." The conference room felt smaller suddenly, the glass walls offering no privacy from the curious stares of her colleagues. Mara grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my sleeve. "We'll talk about this at home," she hissed. "Will we? Because lately, it seems like you're never home. Always working late, always traveling for conferences, always collaborating on special projects." I emphasized the last words, watching her reaction. Her grip on my arm tightened. "Stop it." Stop what? Asking questions? Paying attention? Being a husband? She released my arm and stepped back, her professional mask sliding back into place. I have work to do, Reid. We'll discuss this later. I'm sure you do have work to do. Lots of collaboration ahead, right? I left the roses on the conference table and walked out, feeling the eyes of her colleagues tracking my movement across the office. The bearded guy in flannel was pretending to read something on his screen, but I could see him watching me in his peripheral vision. The young woman who'd been so confused by my existence was typing furiously, probably updating someone on the drama unfolding in their workplace. In the elevator, I pulled out my phone and started taking notes. Details I'd observed, questions that needed answers, inconsistencies in the story my wife had been telling me for months. Silas Ventar, creative director. Familiar enough with my wife to touch her casually in front of colleagues. Unsurprised to learn she was married, which suggested he already knew. The way he'd positioned himself in the doorway, protective and possessive. The complete absence of any evidence that Mara had a husband. Not just no photos, no mentions of weekend plans with a spouse, no references to being married, nothing. Her colleagues' genuine surprise wasn't an act. They truly hadn't known. The wedding ring that got in the way at work. Except I'd seen other married women in that office wearing their rings without any apparent difficulty. By the time I reached the parking garage, I had a theory forming. It wasn't a theory I wanted to believe, but it fit the evidence better than the story Mara had been selling me. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, watching the entrance to her building. At 3:47 p.m., Silas Ventar emerged and walked to a silver BMW parked 3 spaces from the elevator. He moved with the casual confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. I followed him. Not because I had a plan, but because I needed to know more about the man who felt comfortable touching my wife in front of her colleagues. The man who hadn't seemed surprised to learn she was married, which meant she'd told him, which meant they talked about personal things, which meant their relationship extended beyond professional collaboration. Silas drove to an upscale coffee shop in the Arts District, where he met with 2 other business types for what looked like a casual networking session. I watched from across the street, noting how he checked his phone constantly, how he smiled at whatever messages he was receiving. At 4:23 p.m., his smile widened at something on his screen. He typed a quick response, then returned his attention to his companions with obvious satisfaction. I wondered what message had made him so happy, and I wondered who had sent it. When I got home, Mara's car wasn't in the driveway. She usually finished work by 5, but it was nearly 6 when she finally walked through our front door. She looked tired, stressed, like she'd spent the day managing a crisis. "We need to talk," she said, setting her purse on the kitchen counter. "Yes, we do." She poured herself a glass of wine before settling across from me at our dining room table. The roses I'd brought to her office were nowhere to be seen. "What you did today was inappropriate," she began. "What I did? I brought my wife flowers on what I thought was our anniversary. How is that inappropriate? You embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. You made accusations. You acted jealous and possessive." I studied her face, looking for tells. Mara had always been good at controlling her expressions, but 4 years of marriage had taught me to read the subtle signs. The way she touched her neck when she was nervous, the way her voice got slightly higher when she was lying. "Tell me about Silas Ventar." Her hand went to her neck. "He's my colleague, my superior, actually. He seemed very comfortable touching you." "It was a professional interaction, Reid. You're reading too much into it." "Am I? Because your colleagues seemed pretty surprised to learn you were married. That's not something that usually comes up in professional interactions?" She took a long sip of wine. "I prefer to keep my personal life private at work. It's more professional that way." "So professional that you don't wear your wedding ring. So professional that there's no evidence I exist in your workspace. So professional that your LinkedIn profile makes you look completely single." My relationship status isn't relevant to my professional brand. Your professional brand. I repeated the words slowly. Is that what this is about? Your brand? She set down her wine glass with more force than necessary. You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. The expectations, the competition. I have to be perfect, Reid. I can't afford any distractions. And I'm a distraction. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're saying your husband is bad for your image. She stood up abruptly, pacing to the kitchen window. You're twisting my words. Am I? Then explain it to me. Explain why you're ashamed of being married to me. I'm not ashamed. Then why does nobody at your office know I exist? She turned to face me, her expression defensive. They know now. Because I forced the issue. Because I showed up and made it impossible for you to pretend otherwise. I wasn't pretending anything, I just don't talk about my personal life at work. I pulled out my phone and opened her Instagram account. Let's see about that. Her professional Instagram was carefully curated, behind-the-scenes shots from creative meetings, inspirational quotes about female leadership, photos from industry conferences. I scrolled through months of posts, looking for any evidence that she had a husband. Nothing. Not a single photo of us together, not a mention of being married, not even a subtle reference to having a partner. But there were plenty of photos from office events, team dinners, and work trips. Photos that included Silas Ventar with suspicious frequency. Interesting professional brand, I said, showing her the screen. Very single-focused. She grabbed the phone from my hands. This is my work account. Of course it focuses on work. What about your personal account? I don't have a personal account. That was news to me. Since when? Since I realized social media was a waste of time. I opened Facebook on my phone, searching for her profile. It was still there, but she hadn't posted anything in 6 months. The last post was a photo of our Christmas tree with the caption, "Grateful for the holidays." Before that, scattered posts about work achievements, friend gatherings, and motivational quotes. Very few photos of us together, and none recent. When did you stop posting on Facebook? She handed my phone back. I told you social media is a waste of time. Or maybe you stopped posting because it's hard to maintain 2 different versions of yourself, the single professional woman and the married woman at home. Her neck again. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then help me understand. Walk me through a typical day at work. Who do you eat lunch with? Who do you collaborate with on projects? Who do you travel with for conferences? Why does it matter? Because I'm your husband, and I'm realizing I don't know anything about your daily life. I don't know your colleagues, your projects, your travel schedule. I don't know who you spend 40 hours a week with, and apparently they don't know about me either. She returned to the table, refilling her wine glass. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Then make it smaller. Answer my questions. She took another sip of wine, buying time. I usually eat lunch at my desk. I work on campaigns with various team members depending on the project. Travel is usually with whoever's assigned to the account. Silas travels with you? Another pause. Sometimes. He's the creative director, so he's involved in major client presentations. How often? I don't know. It depends on the client needs. I pulled out my phone again, this time opening her shared Google Calendar. We'd synced our calendars years ago to coordinate schedules, though I was realizing now that hers had become increasingly vague over the past year. Let's see, I said, scrolling through her recent entries. Nashville conference in September, Atlanta client meeting in August, Boston presentation in July. That's a lot of travel. It's a competitive industry, Reid. Face-to-face meetings matter. Who did you travel with for these meetings? Team members. Which team members? She finished her wine in one long swallow. I don't remember every detail of every trip. I switched to Instagram and searched for Silas Ventar's profile. It was public, showcasing his own professional brand, expensive restaurants, luxury travel, networking events. I scrolled through his recent posts, noting the locations and dates. Nashville in September. A photo of him at a rooftop bar with the caption, "Great Conference, Better City." Atlanta in August. A picture of him in a hotel lobby, tagged at the same hotel where Mara's corporate card had been charged. Boston in July. A selfie at the airport with the hashtag client life. Every trip Mara had taken in the past 6 months, Silas had been there too. Same cities, same dates, same hotels. Interesting coincidence, I said, showing her his Instagram posts. Her face went pale. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm observing patterns. Your travel schedule matches his exactly. We work for the same company, Reid. We travel to the same client meetings. Do you stay at the same hotels? The company books our accommodations. In the same hotel? I don't know what hotels he stays at. I focus on my own reservations. I pulled up our credit card statements on my banking app, scrolling through the charges from her recent trips. Hotel rooms, meals, transportation, all the expected business expenses. But I was looking for something else now, patterns I hadn't noticed before. Room service, I said, pointing to a charge from the Atlanta trip. 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. That's late for a business dinner. I was tired from traveling. I ordered food to my room. 2 entrees? She stared at the phone screen, her face cycling through several emotions. I ordered extra food. I was hungry. 2 entrees, 2 desserts, 2 bottles of wine. I don't have to justify my meal choices to you. But her voice had gone up half an octave, and her hand was back at her neck. The tells were adding up, painting a picture I didn't want to see, but couldn't ignore. Mara, I said quietly, I need you to tell me the truth. About what? About Silas, about the travel, about why you don't wear your wedding ring to work. She stood up again, this time moving toward the stairs. I'm tired, Reid. This conversation is going nowhere. This conversation is going exactly where it needs to go. We're going to keep talking until I understand what's happening. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, her back to me. Nothing's happening. You're being paranoid and jealous, and I don't like what it's doing to you. What it's doing to me? What about what it's doing to us? What about the fact that my wife is living a completely separate life where I don't exist? She turned around, and for the first time since I'd arrived at her office, she looked genuinely upset, not angry or defensive, but sad. I never meant for it to get this complicated, she said. My heart stopped. What did you never mean to get complicated? She realized what she'd said and quickly backtracked. I meant keeping work and home separate. I never meant for it to seem like I was hiding you. But it was too late. She'd revealed the truth in that moment of vulnerability. Something had gotten complicated, and it wasn't just her professional boundaries. Go upstairs, Mara. Get some sleep. But tomorrow, we're going to finish this conversation. She climbed the stairs without another word, leaving me alone in our dining room with a head full of questions and a heart full of dread. I spent the next hour going through our shared calendar more carefully, cross-referencing her entries with Silas's Instagram posts. The pattern was undeniable. Every business trip, every late meeting, every weekend emergency at the office coincided with his activities. But it was the gaps that told the real story. The times when her calendar showed client dinner, but provided no details. The weekend entries marked simply as work, with no explanation. The increasing frequency of nights when she came home late, claiming deadline pressure. I pulled up our bank statements and started tracking her expenses more carefully. The room service charges were just the beginning. There were restaurant bills for 2 at places she'd never mentioned visiting. There were charges at stores in cities where she'd claimed to be in meetings all day. There were patterns of spending that suggested someone with time to shop, time to explore, time to enjoy herself, time to be with someone else. By midnight, I had built a case that would have made my old journalism professors proud. Timeline, evidence, corroborating details. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. My wife was having an affair with her creative director, and she'd been lying to me for months. The only question now was what I was going to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my home office, surrounded by printouts of credit card statements, calendar entries, and social media posts. By dawn, I had built a comprehensive timeline of my wife's deception. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed more than circumstantial proof. I needed confirmation that would leave no room for doubt or alternative explanations. Lucky for me, I had a friend who specialized in finding the truth. Bob Hawk Hawkins had been my source for dozens of investigative stories back when I was a journalist. Former Portland police detective, now a private investigator who helped lawyers, insurance companies, and suspicious spouses uncover facts that people preferred to keep hidden. I called him at 7 a.m. "Reid Trenner." Hawk's gravelly voice came through the phone. "Haven't heard from you in months. What's the emergency?" "I need your help with something personal." "Ah, the wife?" Hawk had met Mara exactly once at a barbecue 2 years ago. He'd spent 5 minutes talking to her before pulling me aside to warn me that she was trouble in expensive clothes. I'd dismissed his concerns as cynical cop instincts, but now I wondered what he'd seen that I'd missed. "Can we meet this morning?" "My office, 8:30. Bring coffee and whatever evidence you've already collected." Hawk's office occupied the second floor of a converted warehouse in the old Port District. The space was deliberately unglamorous: metal desk, filing cabinets, a couple of uncomfortable chairs. Hawk believed that comfortable clients were clients who weren't motivated to pay their bills quickly. I spread my research across his desk: bank statements, calendar printouts, screenshots of social media posts, notes from my office visit. Hawk examined everything with the methodical attention of someone who'd spent 30 years evaluating evidence. "How long have you suspected?" he asked. "Consciously?" "Since yesterday." "Subconsciously?" "Maybe 6 months." "What changed yesterday?" I told him about the office visit, the colleagues who didn't know I existed, Silas's casual familiarity with my wife. Hawk nodded along, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "The travel schedule is the smoking gun," he said, pointing to the timeline I'd created. "Same cities, same dates, same hotels. That's not coincidence. What do I need to prove it definitively?" "Depends what you want to do with the proof. Divorce court, public humiliation, just personal satisfaction?" I hadn't thought that far ahead. "I want the truth. All of it." "Truth costs money. How much are you willing to spend?" "Whatever it takes." Hawk quoted me a daily rate that made me wince, but I agreed immediately. Some things were worth the investment. "I'll need 3 days to get you a complete picture," he said. "Phone records, hotel surveillance if it's available, financial deep dive. You sure you want to know everything?" "I'm sure. Sometimes ignorance is cheaper than truth." "I'm past that point." Hawk leaned back in his chair, studying my face. "You look like hell, Reid. When's the last time you slept?" "Sleep's overrated." "So is revenge. Don't make any decisions while you're running on anger and caffeine." But I was already making decisions. I was planning moves 3 steps ahead, considering consequences and countermoves. The journalist in me wanted the complete story. The husband in me wanted justice. "Just get me the facts, Hawk. I'll handle the rest." I left his office with a plan and a timeline. 3 days to gather evidence, then a confrontation that would end this charade once and for all. But first, I had other sources to consult. Jade Fallon had been Mara's best friend since college. They talked every few days, shared secrets, and maintained the kind of intimate friendship that often excluded spouses. If anyone knew about Mara's extracurricular activities, it would be Jade. I called her from my truck, parked outside a coffee shop near the University of Southern Maine campus, where she taught sociology. Reid! Jade's voice was bright with surprise. This is unexpected. Is everything okay? I wanted to ask you about something, about Mara's work situation. A pause. Her work situation? She's been traveling a lot lately. Conferences, client meetings. I'm trying to understand her schedule better. Another pause, longer this time. Why don't you ask Mara? I did, but you know how she is about work stress. She doesn't like to worry me with the details. It was a lie, but a plausible one. Jade had always seen Mara as the strong, independent type who handled her own problems. What do you want to know? The Nashville conference in September, how did that go? Silence stretched between us. I could practically hear Jade thinking, weighing her words. It went well, I think. She seemed happy when she got back. Did she mention who she traveled with? I don't really remember the details, Reid. You know I don't pay much attention to her work stuff. But Jade's voice had changed. The natural warmth was gone, replaced by careful neutrality. She was being evasive, which meant she knew something. What about Atlanta, the client meeting in August? Reid, why are you asking me these questions? If you want to know about Mara's travel, you should talk to Mara. I'm just trying to be a better husband, more interested in her career, more supportive of her professional goals. That's great, but I really don't know the specifics of her business trips. She was lying. Jade was a terrible liar, always had been. Her voice got higher when she was being dishonest, and right now she sounded like she'd been breathing helium. Has she mentioned anyone named Silas Ventar? The silence that followed was deafening. Jade? Who? Silas Ventar, her creative director. Oh, maybe? She might have mentioned him in passing. In what context? I don't remember, Reid. Look, I have a class starting in 10 minutes. Can we talk later? Sure, but Jade, if there's something I should know about Mara's work situation, I hope you'd tell me. There's nothing to tell. Everything's fine. She hung up before I could respond. Everything was definitely not fine. Jade's reaction confirmed what I already suspected. She knew about the affair and had been helping Mara hide it. The best friend as accomplice, covering for lies and providing alibis. I drove home and spent the afternoon going through Mara's belongings with new eyes. Her dresser drawers, her side of the closet, her bathroom supplies. I wasn't looking for evidence of infidelity. I already had that. I was looking for evidence of deception, the small ways she'd been living a double life. In her jewelry box, I found receipts from stores I'd never heard of in cities where she'd claimed to be in business meetings. Expensive lingerie from a boutique in Nashville, a bracelet from a gallery in Atlanta, perfume from a department store in Boston. She'd been shopping on these trips, buying things for herself with money from our joint account. But she'd never mentioned the purchases, never worn the lingerie at home, never shown me the bracelet or the perfume. In her purse, I found business cards from restaurants in all the cities she'd visited. Not just any restaurants, romantic places, the kind with intimate lighting and wine lists that cost more than my monthly truck payment. And in her laptop bag, I found something that made my hands shake with rage. A receipt from the Riverside Inn dated 6 months ago for a weekend stay in their luxury suite. The same weekend she'd claimed to be sick with food poisoning from a work conference. The same weekend I'd brought her soup and medicine, worried about her health. The same weekend she'd been in a hotel suite with another man, using our credit card to pay for it. I photographed everything with my phone, building a digital evidence file that would be impossible to deny or explain away. Then I carefully returned everything to its original location. When Mara came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room with a glass of whiskey and a calm expression that took every ounce of my self-control to maintain. "How was your day?" I asked. "Busy, lots of meetings." She kicked off her heels and headed toward the kitchen. "What about you?" "Productive. I learned some interesting things." She paused in the doorway. "About what?" About attention to detail, about how small inconsistencies can reveal larger patterns. That sounds very philosophical. It's more practical than philosophical. For instance, I learned that the Riverside Inn has excellent room service. Her face went white. Funny thing about that place, I continued. I was thinking of booking us a table for our anniversary next week, but when I mentioned it to you yesterday, you said you'd never been there. She gripped the doorframe. I might have been there for a work function? A work function that required an overnight stay in their luxury suite? Reid. A work function that happened the same weekend you had food poisoning? She walked slowly back to the living room, moving like someone approaching a dangerous animal. I can explain. I'm sure you can. You're very creative. It's what makes you such a successful professional. I pulled out my phone and showed her the receipt photo. $600 for one night. That's expensive food poisoning. She sank into the chair across from me, her face cycling through emotions: panic, calculation, resignation. It wasn't what you think, she said finally. What do I think? That I was there with someone else. Were you? Another long pause. Yes, but it wasn't romantic, Reid. It was work-related. Work-related activities that required a luxury suite? The client wanted to meet in a private setting, away from the office. Which client? I can't tell you that. Confidentiality agreement. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Try again. Reid, please, you have to trust me. Trust you. You lied about being sick. You used our money to pay for a hotel room where you met another man. You've been hiding your marriage from your colleagues and living like a single woman at work. Why exactly should I trust you? She started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, the kind someone sheds when their carefully constructed lies are falling apart. You don't understand the pressure I'm under, she said. The expectations, the competition. I have to be perfect. So you decided to be perfectly dishonest? I decided to be successful, and sometimes success requires difficult choices. Like choosing Silas Ventar over your husband. Her tears stopped immediately. What? Silas Ventar, your creative director, your travel companion, your reason for not wearing a wedding ring to work. You're wrong. Am I? Then explain why you've traveled to the same cities on the same dates and stayed at the same hotels. Coincidence? Explain why you ordered room service for 2 in Atlanta. I was hungry. Explain why you bought lingerie in Nashville that I've never seen you wear. She went very still. You went through my things. I went through our things, in our house, that we pay for with our joint account. You had no right. I had every right. I'm your husband, remember? The man you promised to love and honor and forsake all others for? She wiped her eyes and sat up straighter, her professional composure reasserting itself. This conversation isn't productive. You're right. It's not productive because you keep lying to me. I'm not lying. I pulled out my phone again and showed her Silas's Instagram posts from her business trips. Same cities, same dates, same hotels, explain that. She stared at the screen for a long moment. We work for the same company. We travel to the same meetings. Do you sleep in the same rooms? Of course not. Then why did you need a luxury suite at the Riverside Inn for a work meeting? It was complicated. Uncomplicated for me. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our suburban street with its perfect lawns and happy families. You wouldn't understand. Try me. The client was difficult, demanding. He wanted to meet in an informal setting, and Silas thought the hotel suite would be more comfortable than a conference room. So Silas was there. Yes. In the luxury suite. Yes. Overnight. A pause. The meeting ran late. How late? Very late. Late enough that you both needed to stay overnight. It was more convenient than driving home. In separate rooms? Another pause. The company only approved one room. So you shared a room with Silas Ventar. We shared a suite. It had a living area and a bedroom. He slept on the couch. I finished my whiskey and set the glass down carefully. Mara, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. She turned from the window to face me. Are you having an affair with Silas Ventar? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. She looked at me with the expression of someone calculating odds, weighing options, deciding how much truth she could afford to tell. No, she said finally. I'm not having an affair. But her hand went to her neck as she said it. Okay, I said, standing up. Thank you for clarifying that. She looked surprised by my calm acceptance. You believe me? I believe you've told me everything you're willing to tell me right now. Reid, I know this looks bad, but it doesn't just look bad, Mara. It is bad. You've been lying to me for months, living a double life, and treating our marriage like it's something to be ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of our marriage. Then wear your wedding ring to work tomorrow. Put a photo of us on your desk. Tell your colleagues about the man you love enough to come home to every night. She didn't respond. That's what I thought, I said. I'm going to bed. We'll continue this conversation when you're ready to tell me the truth. I left her standing in the living room and climbed the stairs to our bedroom, but I didn't go to sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, waiting for Hawk to call with his preliminary findings. The call came at 11:30 p.m. You're not going to like this, Hawk said without preamble. Tell me. Your wife has been renting a studio apartment downtown for 8 months. Month-to-month lease, paid with checks from an account you don't have access to. My heart sank. What account? She opened a separate checking account in January. Her paychecks are direct deposited there, and she transfers just enough to your joint account to cover her share of household expenses. How much money are we talking about? She makes more than she's been telling you. About 30% more, based on the deposit amounts. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not only was she cheating, she was stealing, hiding income, maintaining a secret apartment, living a completely separate life. There's more, Hawk continued. The apartment neighbors recognize her. She stays there Tuesday and Thursday nights regularly, sometimes weekends. They think she's single. Of course they do. Hotel records show she and Ventar have stayed at the same properties on 7 different occasions over the past 6 months. Always in separate rooms, but adjacent ones. Adjacent. Connected by interior doors in most cases. I closed my eyes, trying to process the scope of her deception. What else? Phone records show extensive texting between them, hundreds of messages per week including evenings and weekends. I can't get the content without a subpoena, but the frequency tells a story. Any other men? Not that I can find. This appears to be focused on Ventar. How long? Based on the financial records and communication patterns, I'd say it started about 10 months ago. The apartment lease and separate bank account suggest she's been planning an exit strategy for at least 8 months. An exit strategy. She wasn't just cheating, she was preparing to leave me. The secret apartment, the hidden money, the complete erasure of our marriage from her professional life. She'd been building a new life without me, piece by piece. What do you recommend? I asked. Depends on your goals. If you want a divorce, you have enough evidence to ensure a favorable settlement. If you want to try counseling, you have enough leverage to force honesty. If you want revenge, what kind of revenge? The kind that destroys reputations and ends careers. But that's a dangerous game, Reid. Make sure you're prepared for the consequences. I thanked Hawk and hung up, then sat in the darkness thinking about consequences. About the woman sleeping in the guest room downstairs, who'd been systematically dismantling our marriage while pretending to love me. About the man who'd been helping her do it, who touched my wife with casual ownership while shaking my hand with practiced charm. About the fact that they thought I was too stupid or too trusting to figure out what was happening. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake was underestimating what I was willing to do about it. I pulled out my laptop and started making plans. The next morning, Mara left for work without saying goodbye. I heard her moving around the kitchen, making coffee and gathering her things, but she didn't come upstairs to our bedroom. She was avoiding me, probably hoping I'd cool off and return to my previous state of willful ignorance. She was going to be disappointed. I waited until her car disappeared down our street, then called in sick to my scheduled inspections. I had more important work to do. First stop, downtown Portland, to see Mara's secret apartment. The building was a converted warehouse in the arts district, the kind of trendy space that attracted young professionals who wanted to live like they were still in college. According to Hawk's research, Mara rented Unit 4B under her maiden name, paying $800 a month for a studio with exposed brick walls and industrial lighting. I parked across the street and watched the building for an hour, noting the residents who came and went. Young, hip, successful-looking people who drove nice cars and wore expensive clothes. Mara's new peer group, the kind of people who would see a suburban husband as a liability rather than an asset. At 10 a.m., I called the building's rental office. "I'm interested in Unit 4C, I told the leasing agent. "I understand it might be available soon." "Actually, 4C is occupied, but we have a similar unit on the third floor. Would you like to schedule a viewing?" "I'd prefer the fourth floor. I heard good things about the tenant in 4B. Quiet, professional, keeps to herself." "Oh, you mean Mara Collins?" "Yes, she's lovely, very quiet, very neat. Are you looking for something similar in terms of layout?" Mara Collins. Her maiden name, the identity she'd been using to build her new life. The leasing agent's casual familiarity suggested Mara had been playing the role of single professional woman very convincingly. "Does she live alone?" I asked. "As far as I know, though she does have a gentleman friend who visits regularly. Very polite, drives a nice car." My hands tightened on the phone. "What kind of car?" "Silver BMW, I think. Why do you ask?" "Just curious about the neighborhood, trying to get a sense of the community." I hung up and sat in my truck, staring at the building where my wife maintained her secret life. A place where she was Mara Collins, single woman, visited regularly by her gentleman friend with the silver BMW. The scope of her deception was breathtaking. Not just an affair, but an entirely constructed alternate identity. She'd been living as two different people, switching between them as easily as changing clothes. My phone buzzed with a text message from Mara. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, wondering if she was actually working or if she was planning to spend the evening at her secret apartment with Silas. Wondering how many working late nights had actually been spent in that studio, living the life she preferred to our marriage. I texted back, "Okay, love you." The response came immediately. "Love you too." 3 words that meant nothing, sent by a woman who'd been systematically erasing me from her life for months. The casual cruelty of it was almost impressive. I drove to Pinnacle Marketing's office building and found a parking spot with a clear view of the garage exit. If Mara was really working late, she'd be there past 6 p.m. If she was lying, she'd leave at her normal time and drive to her apartment or to meet Silas. At 5:15 p.m., her car emerged from the garage. I followed at a distance, watching as she drove not toward home or toward her secret apartment, but toward the old Port District where Portland's best restaurants clustered around cobblestone streets and historic buildings. She parked outside 4th Street, one of the city's most expensive and romantic restaurants, the kind of place where reservations were required weeks in advance and dinner for 2 cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see her being seated at a corner table. She was wearing the black dress she'd claimed was for client presentations, but no client was joining her. Instead, Silas Ventar walked through the door 5 minutes later, moving through the restaurant like he owned it. He kissed her cheek before sitting down, a gesture of casual intimacy that confirmed everything I'd suspected. They weren't business colleagues having a working dinner. They were lovers having a date, in public, confident that no one they knew would see them. I took photos through the restaurant window, capturing their body language, their smiles, the way Mara leaned across the table to touch Silas's hand. Evidence that would be impossible to explain away as professional collaboration. Then I drove home and started planning phase 2 of my investigation. Mara arrived home at 11 p.m., carrying takeout containers and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who'd had an excellent evening. "How was work?" I asked from the couch, where I'd been reading and waiting. "Exhausting. Client crisis that needed immediate attention." She held up the takeout containers. "Grab dinner on the way home. You eat already?" "Hours ago." "What kind of crisis?" "Brand messaging problems. Very technical, very boring." She was lying so smoothly that I almost admired her skill. No hesitation, no tells, just practiced deception delivered with complete confidence. "Which client?" "The Portland Harbor Project. You wouldn't know them." "Try me." A brief pause. "Maritime Development Group. They're launching a new waterfront complex." I nodded like I believed her, filing away the lie for future reference. "Sounds complicated." "It is, but we got it sorted out." "We?" "The team. Silas and I worked through the messaging problems." "At the office?" "Where else?" I could have told her where else. I could have described the corner table at 4th Street, the way she'd touched his hand, the kiss on the cheek that spoke of intimate familiarity, but I wasn't ready to play that card yet. "I'm glad you got it resolved," I said instead. She smiled, probably relieved that I wasn't asking more questions. "Me too. I'm exhausted. Going to shower and go to bed. I'll be up in a few minutes." But when I finally went upstairs, she was already asleep, or pretending to be. Either way, she'd positioned herself on the far edge of our king-size bed, as far from my side as possible. I lay awake thinking about the woman beside me, who could lie so effortlessly about spending the evening with another man, who could come home carrying takeout containers as props to support her deception, who could kiss me goodnight with lips that had kissed someone else hours earlier. The next morning brought a development I hadn't expected. I was drinking coffee and reading the news when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jade Fallon's name. "Reid, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "About what?" "About the questions you've been asking. About Mara." "What about her?" "I know what you think is happening, and you're wrong." "What do I think is happening?" A pause. "Can we meet?" "This isn't a conversation for the phone." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near the university. Jade was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a large latte, like she was trying to warm herself against a chill only she could feel. "You look terrible," she said as I sat down. "Thanks. You called this meeting." "Because I'm worried about you. And about Mara." "In that order?" She ignored the sarcasm. "Mara told me about your conversation the other night, about your suspicions." "Did she tell you about her secret apartment? Her separate bank account? Her dinner dates with Silas Ventar?" Jade's face went through several expressions before settling on resignation. "She told me you hired a private investigator." She's very perceptive. "Reid, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly. My wife is having an affair and you've been helping her cover it up." "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Jade stared into her latte like it might contain answers. "It's complicated." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Uncomplicate it for me." Mara is... she's struggling with some things, personal things. The apartment isn't about Silas, it's about having space to figure out what she wants. What she wants is to leave me for her creative director. No. What she wants is to feel successful and independent and valued. Things she doesn't feel at home. The accusation hit like a slap. She doesn't feel valued at home? You have to understand, Reid. Your career is stable, predictable. You inspect houses and come home and watch Netflix. Mara's career is dynamic, creative, competitive. She needs intellectual stimulation. So, she found it in Silas Ventar's bed? She found it in someone who understands her professional ambitions, someone who speaks her language. Someone who's married to someone else, by the way. Did she mention that part? Jade's face went pale. What? Silas Ventar is married, has been for 6 years. His wife is a pediatric nurse, they have 2 kids, and they live in a beautiful colonial in Cape Elizabeth. I pulled out my phone and showed her Silas's Facebook profile, which he'd been careful to keep separate from his professional Instagram. Photos of family vacations, school plays, little league games. A man who was as committed to his double life as Mara was to hers. She doesn't know, Jade whispered. She doesn't know, or she doesn't care. She thinks he's divorced. He told her his marriage ended 2 years ago. I almost laughed. So she's not just having an affair with a married man, she's having an affair with a married man who's lying to her about being married. Oh, God. Jade put her head in her hands. This is worse than I thought. How long have you known? About Silas? 6 months? About the apartment? Since she signed the lease? About the separate bank account? She looked up at me with guilty eyes. She asked me to help her set it up. You helped her steal money from our joint finances. She said she needed independence, financial autonomy. She said you were controlling about money. I'm controlling about money because I pay attention to where it goes. Apparently that makes me a terrible husband. Jade reached across the table and touched my hand. Reid, you have to believe me. I never thought it would go this far. I thought she was just going through a phase, trying to figure out who she was outside of marriage. By having an affair. By exploring her options. With a man who's lying to her about his marital status. She doesn't know that. She's about to find out. Jade's grip on my hand tightened. What are you going to do? I looked at this woman who'd been my wife's best friend for over a decade, who'd helped her set up secret bank accounts and maintain lies, who'd covered for her deception while watching our marriage crumble, who was still trying to protect Mara even now, when the truth was impossible to deny. I'm going to tell her the truth about her boyfriend, and then I'm going to tell his wife the truth about her husband. Reid, please, think about what you're doing. I've thought about it. I've thought about nothing else for days. This will destroy lives. Lives are already destroyed, Jade. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. What about forgiveness? What about working things out? What about honesty? What about loyalty? What about the vows she made to me 4 years ago? People make mistakes. This isn't a mistake. This is a calculated decision to build a new life while keeping the old one as a safety net. This is months of lies, deception, and theft. This is choosing another man over her husband every single day for the better part of a year. I pulled my arm free. Thanks for the coffee, Jade, and thanks for finally telling me the truth. Are you going to tell Mara that we talked? I'm going to tell Mara a lot of things, but first, I'm going to have a conversation with Silas Ventar's wife. I left Jade sitting at the coffee shop and drove home to prepare for the most difficult phone call I'd ever made. But it was also going to be the most satisfying one. Because if Mara and Silas thought they could destroy 2 marriages while living in their fantasy bubble of romantic deception, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The truth was coming for all of us, and I was going to make sure it arrived with maximum impact. Dr. Jennifer Ventar answered her phone on the 3rd ring, her voice carrying the tired but professional tone of someone who'd been dealing with sick children all day. Dr. Ventar speaking. Dr. Ventar, my name is Reid Trenner. I'm calling about your husband, Silas. A pause. Is he hurt? Has there been an accident? No accident, but there is something you need to know about him. Who is this again? My name is Reid Trenner. My wife works with your husband at Pinnacle Marketing. Another pause, longer this time. What's this about, Mr. Trenner? I took a deep breath. Your husband has been having an affair with my wife for the past 10 months. The silence that followed lasted so long I thought she might have hung up. Dr. Ventar, are you there? I'm here. Her voice had changed completely, becoming flat and clinical. What evidence do you have? I spent the next 20 minutes walking her through everything. The travel records, the hotel stays, the restaurant receipts, the secret apartment, the financial deception. Dr. Ventar listened without interruption, occasionally asking for clarification on dates or details. The Riverside Inn, she said when I mentioned the luxury suite. That's where we spent our 5th anniversary. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm a doctor, Mr. Trenner. I deal with facts, not emotions. And the facts you've presented are quite conclusive. What are you going to do? What any rational person would do. I'm going to protect my children and my assets, and then I'm going to destroy him. The cold fury in her voice was more frightening than shouting would have been. There's something else, I said. Your husband told my wife that you were divorced. She doesn't know he's still married. Of course she doesn't. Silas has always been good at compartmentalizing his lies. This isn't his first affair. Mr. Trenner, my husband is a serial cheater who thinks he's smarter than everyone around him. Your wife is just the latest in a series of women who believed his stories about being trapped in a loveless marriage. My heart sank. Mara wasn't special to Silas. She was just convenient. Another conquest for a man who collected affairs like trophies. I have a proposition, Dr. Ventar continued. I assume you're planning some kind of confrontation? I am. I'd like to coordinate our efforts. Maximum impact, minimum escape routes. I found myself smiling for the first time in days. What did you have in mind? Pinnacle Marketing is hosting their annual holiday party next Friday. Silas has been looking forward to it for weeks. Apparently, he's expecting some kind of promotion announcement. How do you know that? Because he's been unusually attentive lately, bringing me flowers and taking the kids to dinner. He always gets affectionate when he's feeling guilty about something. You want to confront them at the party? I want to destroy them at the party, in front of their colleagues, their clients, their professional network. I want to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people they are. The plan she outlined was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. We would coordinate our arrival at the party, armed with evidence that would be impossible to deny or explain away. While Mara and Silas were expecting a celebration of their professional success, they would instead face the complete destruction of their reputations. One more thing, Dr. Ventar said before we hung up. I'm going to file for divorce on Monday morning. My attorney will be serving Silas with papers at his office. Won't that tip him off? Not if your wife receives her papers at the same time. The symmetry was perfect. While Mara and Silas were dealing with the public humiliation of exposure, they would also be facing the legal consequences of their choices. I spent the rest of the week preparing for the confrontation, gathering additional evidence, and planning my approach. Hawk provided me with printed copies of hotel records, financial statements, and a timeline that laid out the affair in devastating detail. On Thursday evening, I made my final preparations. You're going to the holiday party tomorrow night? I asked Mara over dinner. Of course. It's the biggest event of the year for our company. Mind if I come with you? She nearly choked on her wine. What? The holiday party. You've mentioned it several times, and I realized I've never seen you in your professional environment. I'd like to support you. Reid, it's really more of a work event. Spouses don't usually attend. But they're not forbidden, right? No, but then I'll come with you. I'll get to meet all your colleagues, see you in action, maybe have a conversation with that creative director you work so closely with. The color drained from her face. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? I promise to be on my best behavior. I'll even wear a tie. It might be awkward. You don't know anyone there. I'll know you, and I'm sure you'll introduce me to everyone important. She pushed food around her plate, clearly trying to think of a way out. What if I need to work the room, network with clients? You might get bored. I'll manage. Besides, it's time I became more involved in your career, more supportive of your professional relationships. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Reid, please. This party is important for my career. I need to focus on work, not on entertaining you. I don't need entertainment, Mara. I just want to be there for you. She set down her fork and looked directly at me. I don't want you there. The honesty was refreshing, even if it was brutal. Why not? Because you don't fit in with my work crowd. Because you'll ask awkward questions and make people uncomfortable. Because I need one space in my life where I can just be myself. And yourself doesn't include being married to me? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She stood up abruptly. I meant that I need professional boundaries. I need to be seen as an individual, not as someone's wife. Even if that someone is the man you promised to love and honor. Especially then. The admission hung between us like a confession. She'd finally told me the truth. She was ashamed of being married to me, and she wanted to live in a world where I didn't exist. Okay, I said calmly. I understand. She looked surprised by my acceptance. You do? I understand that you want to be seen as an individual, that you want professional respect based on your own merits, that you don't want to be defined by your relationship to me. Exactly. I also understand that you've been lying to me for months, stealing money from our joint account, maintaining a secret apartment, and having an affair with a married man who's been lying to you about his marital status. She went very still. What? Silas Ventar is married, Mara. Has been for 6 years. His wife is a pediatric nurse. They have 2 kids, and they live in Cape Elizabeth. He's been telling you he's divorced, but he's been lying to you just like you've been lying to me. Her face cycled through several emotions: confusion, denial, realization, and finally rage. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her Silas's Facebook profile. His family vacation to Acadia National Park, posted 3 weeks ago. She stared at the photos of Silas with his wife and children, her hands shaking. He told me he was divorced. He lied, just like you've been lying to me. This is different. How is it different? Because She stopped, realizing she was about to admit to the affair. Because you what, Mara? Because I care about him. There it was. The truth, finally spoken aloud. And you don't care about me? I care about you, but not the way I care about him. Then why are you still married to me? She looked around our dining room, taking in the life we'd built together, the furniture we'd chosen, the photos on the walls, the comfortable routine of shared meals and shared spaces. Because it's safe, she said finally. Because it's easy. Because leaving would be complicated and expensive and messy. So you decided to have the best of both worlds, a stable home life with me and an exciting romance with him. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. How was it supposed to happen? I was going to figure things out, make a decision, choose. When? I don't know, eventually. While stealing money from our joint account and lying to me every single day. I needed options, financial independence. You needed an exit strategy. She didn't deny it. Well, Mara, I'm going to save you the trouble of making a choice. I've already made it for you. What do you mean? I mean your boyfriend's wife is filing for divorce on Monday morning. You'll be served with papers at the same time. Your affair is going to become public knowledge, along with all the financial deception and lies. Her face went white. You called his wife? I called his wife. We had a very productive conversation about what kind of people we're married to. Reid, you can't do this. I can't do what? tell the truth, expose lies, make sure there are consequences for your choices, you'll destroy everything I've worked for. You destroyed everything we worked for. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. She sank back into her chair, the full scope of her situation finally becoming clear to her. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to tell me the truth, all of it. How long it's been going on, how far it's gone, what you were planning to do. And if I tell you the truth, then maybe we can end this marriage with some dignity intact. Maybe we can avoid the public humiliation that's coming your way." She considered this for a long moment. 10 months, she said finally. "It started 10 months ago at a conference in Boston. We had dinner, we talked about work, we connected intellectually. And physically? Not that night. But we started texting, emailing, meeting for coffee. It was just friendship at first." "When did it become more?" 6 months ago, the night at the Riverside Inn. The night you told me you had food poisoning." "Yes." "And since then?" "We've been together whenever possible. The apartment, business trips, late nights at the office. What were you planning to do?" "I was going to leave you after the holidays, start fresh in the new year." "With him?" "I thought so. But now you know he's been lying to you just like you've been lying to me." She started crying then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration and self-pity, the kind someone sheds when their carefully laid plans fall apart. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "But you did hurt me. Every day for 10 months you hurt me with lies and deception and betrayal." "I know." "Do you? Because you've been living in a fantasy world where actions don't have consequences and other people don't have feelings." I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. "You knew exactly what you wanted. You wanted him and the security of being married to me. You wanted excitement and stability, romance and safety. You wanted everything without paying the price for any of it." She wiped her eyes and looked at me with something approaching honesty for the first time in months. "What happens now?" "Now you face the consequences of your choices. Your boyfriend's wife is going to destroy his reputation, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are." "Reid, please. Think about what you're doing." "I've thought about nothing else for weeks. I've thought about the woman I married, who promised to love and honor me. I've thought about the woman who's been lying to my face while planning to abandon me. I've thought about which version of you is real. They're both real." "No, Mara, only one of them is real. The other one is a performance you put on to get what you want." I stood up and walked toward the stairs. "Where are you going?" "To pack your things. You can stay at your secret apartment tonight, and tomorrow night, and every night after that." "You're throwing me out?" "I'm giving you what you wanted. Freedom to be yourself without the burden of being married to me. What about the house, our finances, the divorce?" "Talk to your lawyer. You'll be hearing from mine soon enough." I climbed the stairs and began packing her belongings into suitcases, leaving them by the front door. When I came back downstairs, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her phone, presumably texting Silas about the disaster that was about to engulf them both. "He's not answering," she said without looking up. "He's probably busy explaining to his wife why he lied about being divorced." "This is really happening, isn't it?" "This is really happening." She gathered her purse and keys, looking around our home one last time. "I did love you, Reid. I still do. In my way. Your way isn't enough, Mara. It never was." She left without another word, taking her suitcases and her lies and her fantasy of a perfect life with a man who'd been deceiving her as thoroughly as she'd been deceiving me. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in the living room, looking at the space where she used to exist. Tomorrow would bring the public reckoning, the professional consequences, the complete destruction of the life she'd been building in the shadows. But tonight, for the first time in months, I was alone in my own home with nothing but the truth for company. It felt like freedom. Friday arrived with the kind of crisp December air that made everything seem sharper, more defined. I spent the morning making final preparations for the evening's confrontation, reviewing my evidence file and coordinating with Dr. Ventar. She called at noon with an update. Silas left the house this morning with 2 suitcases, she reported. Told the kids he had a business trip. He's probably staying at your wife's apartment. How are you holding up? I'm fine. Angry but fine. My attorney is ready to file on Monday, and I've already moved half our assets into accounts he can't access. What about tonight? I'll be there at 8 p.m. sharp. You? Same. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? Mr. Trenner, my husband has been humiliating me privately for years. It's time to return the favor. I spent the afternoon getting ready, choosing my clothes carefully. Navy suit, white shirt, red tie. The kind of outfit that commanded respect and projected confidence. If I was going to destroy my wife's career and her lover's reputation, I wanted to look like someone who deserved to be taken seriously. At 7:30 p.m., I drove to the Portland Harbor Hotel, where Pinnacle Marketing was hosting their annual holiday party. The event was held in the hotel's grand ballroom, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Casco Bay and downtown Portland's twinkling lights. I paid for valet parking and walked through the lobby like I belonged there, following signs to the Pinnacle Marketing celebration. The ballroom was already crowded with well-dressed professionals holding cocktails and making networking small talk. I spotted Mara immediately. She was standing near the bar with a group of colleagues, wearing a red dress that hugged her figure and projected confidence. She looked beautiful, successful, completely in her element, and completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. Silas was across the room, holding court with what looked like potential clients. He was animated, charming, playing the role of creative visionary with practiced ease. Every few minutes, his eyes would find Mara across the room, and they would exchange subtle smiles that spoke of shared secrets. I approached the registration table, where a young woman with a clipboard was checking names against a guest list. Reid Trenner, I said. I'm Mara Trenner's husband. She scanned her list, looking confused. I don't see you on here. That's because my wife forgot to add me, but I'm sure it's fine. Spouses are welcome, right? Well, yes, but... Great. Thanks for your help. I walked into the party before she could object, accepting a whiskey from a passing waiter and surveying the room like a general planning a battle. Mara noticed me within minutes. I saw her face go through the familiar cycle of emotions, surprise, panic, calculation. She excused herself from her group and walked toward me with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Reid, what are you doing here? Supporting my wife at her company's biggest event of the year. Isn't that what husbands do? We talked about this. I asked you not to come. You asked me a lot of things, Mara. I'm done accommodating your requests. She glanced around nervously, aware that her colleagues were watching our interaction with curiosity. Please don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I'm mingling, meeting your coworkers, getting to know the people you spend so much time with. Before she could respond, I walked toward the group she'd been talking with, extending my hand to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Reid Trenner, Mara's husband. The 3 colleagues, 2 women and a man, looked genuinely surprised. Husband? One of the women said. I didn't know Mara was married. 4 years this month, I said cheerfully, though apparently she doesn't mention me much at work. She's very private about her personal life, the man said diplomatically. Is she? That's interesting. I'm the opposite. I love talking about my wife, her achievements, her ambitions, her close working relationships. Mara appeared at my elbow, her hand gripping my arm with enough force to leave marks. Reid, let me introduce you to some other people. But I wasn't finished with this group. Mara's been working so hard lately, I continued. All those late nights, weekend meetings, business trips. You must really depend on her. She's definitely dedicated, one of the women said. Especially her collaboration with Silas Ventar. They make quite a team. The temperature around our little circle seemed to drop several degrees. Mara's grip on my arm tightened. Yes, they work well together, the man said carefully. I'd love to meet him. Mara talks about him all the time. Reid, Mara hissed under her breath. Stop it. Stop what? I'm just being social. Across the room, I saw Dr. Jennifer Ventar enter the ballroom. She was wearing a black cocktail dress and the kind of confident expression that came from holding all the cards in a high-stakes game. Excuse me, I said to Mara's colleagues. I see someone I need to talk to. I walked toward Dr. Ventar, leaving Mara to explain my strange behavior to her confused co-workers. Dr. Ventar, I said, extending my hand. Reid Trenner. We spoke on the phone. Mr. Trenner, thank you for coordinating this. Are you ready? I've been ready for years. We stood together, surveying the room like generals preparing for battle. Mara was still with her colleagues, but her eyes kept darting toward me with obvious anxiety. Silas had noticed Dr. Ventar's arrival and was staring at her with the expression of a man seeing a ghost. He knows you're here, I observed. Good. Let him sweat for a few minutes. Dr. Ventar walked calmly toward her husband while I moved to intercept Mara. The timing needed to be perfect, simultaneous confrontations that would create maximum chaos and minimum opportunity for damage control. Mara, I said, appearing at her side again, there's someone I'd like you to meet. Reid, please. Whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything. I'm just facilitating introductions. Across the room, Dr. Ventar had reached Silas. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see his face going pale as she spoke. The clients he'd been charming began to back away, sensing drama they didn't want to be part of. Mara Trenner, I said loudly enough for nearby groups to hear. I'd like you to meet Dr. Jennifer Ventar. She's Silas Ventar's wife. The words hit the party like a bomb. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned toward us. The carefully orchestrated networking event suddenly became a spectacle. Mara stared at Dr. Ventar with the expression of someone watching their world collapse in real time. His wife, she whispered. His wife of 6 years, Dr. Ventar said calmly. Mother of his 2 children, the woman he's been married to throughout his entire relationship with you. The circle of observers grew larger as word spread through the room. This wasn't just personal drama. This was professional suicide happening in real time. He told me he was divorced, Mara said weakly. He lied, Dr. Ventar replied. Just like you lied to your husband about working late all those nights you were in my husband's bed. The crowd around us had gone completely silent. Every conversation in the ballroom had stopped as people strained to hear the confrontation unfolding in their midst. Silas appeared at Dr. Ventar's shoulder, his face flushed with panic and anger. Jennifer, what are you doing here? Introducing myself to your girlfriend. She seems surprised to learn that you're married. This is not the place for this conversation. On the contrary, I said, this is the perfect place. All your colleagues are here, your clients, your professional network, everyone who needs to know what kind of people you really are. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery, displaying the evidence I'd collected over the past week. Hotel records showing you've stayed at the same properties on 7 different occasions, I announced to the growing crowd. Restaurant receipts for romantic dinners, financial records showing my wife has been stealing money from our joint account to maintain a secret apartment. You can't do this, Silas said, reaching for my phone. I can do whatever I want. You destroyed my marriage. I'm destroying your reputation. Dr. Ventar stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. My husband is a serial adulterer who has been lying to his family, his colleagues, and his mistresses for years. Mrs. Trenner is just his latest victim, though she's also a willing participant in destroying 2 marriages. The crowd was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Someone in the back was recording with their phone. By tomorrow, this confrontation would be all over social media. Mara finally found her voice. "This is private business. It doesn't belong here." "Private?" I laughed. "You made it public when you brought your boyfriend to company events, when you traveled together on business trips, when you used your professional relationship to cover your affair." "We never—" Silas started to protest. "Never what? Never shared hotel rooms? Never charged romantic dinners to company accounts? Never lied to your colleagues about your relationship status?" I turned to address the crowd directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, you work with two people who have been systematically deceiving their spouses, their families, and all of you. They've been using company resources to facilitate their affair, lying about their availability for legitimate business, and creating a hostile work environment through their unprofessional relationship." A man in an expensive suit pushed through the crowd, probably a senior executive or client. "What exactly are you alleging?" he asked. "I'm not alleging anything. I'm stating facts supported by evidence." I handed him printed copies of hotel records, financial statements, and timeline documentation. 10 months of deception, theft, and adultery. All documented, all verifiable. The executive examined the papers while the crowd waited in tense silence. His expression grew darker as he read. "This is very serious," he said finally. "It's also very public now," Dr. Ventar added. "My divorce attorney will be filing papers on Monday morning, citing adultery and financial misconduct. I assume Mr. Trenner will be doing the same." "Count on it," I confirmed. Silas made one last desperate attempt to control the situation. "Everyone needs to calm down. This is a misunderstanding that can be resolved privately." "The only misunderstanding," I said, "was thinking you were smart enough to get away with this." I turned to Mara, who had been standing frozen throughout the confrontation. "Did you really think I was too stupid to figure out what you were doing? Too trusting to ask questions? Too weak to do anything about it?" She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. "You underestimated me, Mara. Both of you did. You thought you could destroy my marriage and build your fantasy relationship on the ruins, and I would just accept it. Reid, please." "Please what? Please pretend this never happened? Please protect your reputation? Please make this easy for you?" I looked around the room at the faces staring back at me. Colleagues, clients, industry professionals who would remember this night for years to come. "My wife has been lying to me for 10 months while having an affair with a married man who lied to her about his marital status. They used company resources to facilitate their relationship, stole money from their families, and deceived everyone who trusted them." I finished my whiskey and set the empty glass on a nearby table. I hope it was worth it. Dr. Ventar and I walked toward the exit together, leaving behind a ballroom full of shocked professionals and two people whose careers had just been destroyed in the most public way possible. "How do you feel?" Dr. Ventar asked as we waited for the valet to bring our cars. "Satisfied? You?" "The same, though I suspect the real consequences are just beginning." She was right. By Monday morning, both Mara and Silas would be facing divorce proceedings, professional misconduct investigations, and the complete destruction of their reputations. Their affair, which had seemed so exciting and romantic in secret, would be exposed as the sordid, destructive relationship it really was. I drove home to my empty house, poured myself another whiskey, and sat in the living room where Mara and I used to watch Netflix together. The space felt different now, not lonely, but peaceful. The tension that had been building for months was finally gone, replaced by the calm that comes after a storm. My phone buzzed with text messages, probably from Mara, trying to salvage something from the wreckage of her life. I deleted them without reading them. Whatever she had to say, I'd heard enough lies to last a lifetime. The truth was finally out, and that was all that mattered. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Tuesday in March. Mara didn't contest anything. She couldn't afford to, given the evidence of her financial deception and adultery. I kept the house, most of our assets, and my dignity intact. She moved back to Boston, where she found work at a smaller marketing firm that didn't require references from Pinnacle Marketing. Silas wasn't so lucky. His wife's divorce proceedings had exposed years of financial misconduct and serial adultery. He lost his house, his children, and his career in the creative industry. Dr. Ventar sent me a card when her divorce was finalized, thanking me for my cooperation and wishing me well. She'd kept the house in Cape Elizabeth and primary custody of the children. Silas was working at a small advertising agency in Bangor, making a fraction of his former salary. I never heard from Mara again after the legal proceedings ended. Jade called once to tell me that Mara and Silas had tried to maintain their relationship after the public confrontation, but it hadn't lasted. Apparently, learning that your affair partner is as dishonest as you are takes some of the romance out of the relationship. I sold the house in May and bought a smaller place near the water, with a home office where I could grow my inspection business. The new space finally felt like it belonged to me in a way the suburban house never had. No shadows, no lies, no reminders of a marriage that had been falling apart for months before I even noticed. On warm evenings, I sit on my deck with a book and a whiskey, watching boats navigate the harbor. Sometimes, I think about the 4 years I spent married to a woman who was planning to leave me while pretending to love me. Sometimes I think about the months I spent believing her lies while she built a new life in secret. But mostly, I think about how much better it feels to live with the truth, even when the truth is painful. The ring Mara used to leave on our bathroom counter sits in a drawer in my new house, along with the divorce papers and the evidence files from Hawk's investigation. Reminders of a time when I thought love was enough to overcome deception, when I believed that marriage vows meant something to the person who spoke them. I know better now. And that knowledge, hard-won and expensive as it was, has made me a wiser man than I was when I brought roses to my wife's office and discovered that I didn't exist in her professional life. Some lessons can only